always be a positive thinker. Keep praying, keep hoping. Always think there's always a light. The reason why I'm here is I want to support them, and I want my children to finish their studies.
I'm looking for the best for my family. All my decision is about the family. My goal is to get the PR. We make everything for this. We step by step.
Within the temporary foreign worker program, we have the seasonal agricultural workers program. We also have the caregiver program that allows people to work in homes and provide care to either people with disability, elderly, or children. And then we have the temporary foreign worker program with labor market impact assessment.
In order to be able to hire migrant workers in Canada, an employer has to get permission from the federal government. So they have to make an application. It's an LMIA, with Labor Market Impact Assessment, which basically they have to be able, in theory, they're supposed to be able to demonstrate that they can't find Canadians to do that job. And so they then therefore need to bring in a migrant worker. There's a lot of critiques about that particular system because there's not a lot of checks and balances. And there's not a lot of enforcement of the actual sort of rules that are supposed to be built into place of the LMIAs. But the LMIA is basically the entry point and for an employer to be able to go out and recruit migrant workers.
Canada is well known in the world as one of the best. The reason why is because of the green pastures, or like a dream to have like a good life.
I believe each experience is different for all kinds of people. In my case, it's a good experience. I am really happy. But I know some people, they have some complaint about their experience, but each case is different.
When they come to Canada, they expect that, Canada is a better country, it's a good country, and they'll look after them. But eventually, the realization comes into picture. They feel that you are basically not being treated fairly by your employer, or by the other Canadian at large.
So when a migrant worker comes through the temporary foreign worker program, their work permit stipulates the name of their employer, which essentially takes away their labor mobility rights. You and I, if we don't like a particular employer, we can quit, we can go find another one. Sometimes it's not that easy, but we have the right to do that. They don't have that right. They are legally prohibited from working for another employer, meaning the natural sort of checks and balances that might happen in terms of curbing bad employer behavior disappears, because there's no consequence to that employer for abusing and exploiting these workers, because there's nowhere they can go.
All employers, I can tell you, they bring people here, they wanted to work. None of them really bring people here to have problem. But problem comes because of miscommunication, because of lack of understanding. It's simple things, simple misunderstanding. For instance, they were promised housing, for instance, and that housing never was worked out well. I mean, they didn't know what housing is expected, and the employers didn't know what housing they should provide. So some employers, because they have done it for a longer period of time, so they have a better understanding. For some smaller one, for instance, a landscaping company that brings 10 people, so they have a tougher time to deal with that.
Temporary foreign workers, when they come to work to Canada, they're facing a lot of uncertainties. And some of them don't have very good coping skills. Some of them will recur to drinking alcohol, and sometimes they're driving while under the influence.
My wife is a teacher, and we have 2 kids. One is studying in college, and one is special child. And the reason why they denied my application for the permanent resident for so many times, I think 3 times, because of one of my daughter is special child. So The first time that the immigration denied my application, there is a friend that it's not away from my house here in Calgary. And after doing my job in the afternoon, I'm always going to their house because I'm lonely. I need somebody to be with me just because of that news. The first time, he just offered me the drink, and then after that, he offered me drugs.
Most of the clients that we serve here, if not all of them, are, I would say, experiencing mental stress. Because, when you come to Canada that you don't know nothing, you don't know your path to stay permanently, you don't know your journey, how it ends. It's stress, right? It gives you something that there's no assurance in this country.
Oftentimes it's painted as temporary foreign worker program is a pathway to permanent residency. So a lot of temporary foreign workers, they pay enormous amount of money to come to Canada and then realize that, maybe they're exploited and they're not able to actually use it. I have been in this field now for a few years, and every time I keep discovering different ways that people can exploit other people in Canada. A temporary foreign worker told us about an employer who had charged each temporary foreign worker $10,000 to $15,000. And they had about 5 temporary foreign workers and brought them to Canada, but there was only one job available for the temporary foreign worker. So upon migrating to Canada, the other temporary foreign workers had only one choice, which is to become undocumented.
Most recently, we collaborated with Canadian Border Service Agency, Immigration, Refugees, and Canadian Citizenship. We collaborated as well with ACT Alberta, and we assisted almost 29 workers from Mexico who were victims of human trafficking. They were found in very deplorable conditions, living conditions. They were living in 2 apartments, all the 29 of them, and they were not being paid. Sometimes they were hungry. They went hungry the whole day because the pay was coming very late and the employer did not provide any food. So we all collaborated, and IRCC issued open work permits for them. I think it was about 2 weeks ago. Now they're working, their CSS assisted in providing some housing. So I think if we haven't done the collaboration promptly as everybody did and got involved, I think these people would have been subjected still today to exploitation.
Education, empowerment is very important when they arrived in Canada. I believe all the agencies responsible incoming, the host country, and the country of origin has the power and responsibility to educate all the foreign nationals or the TFW before and when they arrive to Canada.
To be a temporary worker here in Canada actually is hard. For me, for example, I faced a couple of failures. Like my status already, I'm already out of status, and then I'm still waiting for another one, right? So I can't able to work. Then you're gonna think about your financial. How here in Canada, you need to work to be able to pay your rentals. But since the love of my friends, my family, my wife, always there for me to support me, so I'm still here in Canada. Yeah, that's a blessing.
To be able to navigate their lives in Canada is really how they actually draw on religious strength. The other strength, or where they get support from, is sometimes service providers. I think a lot of credit should be given to service providers for the amount of work they do with temporary foreign workers, both work that they do that is paid, and I think there's a lot of work that they also do that is unpaid work.
I started as a foreign national in Canada back in 2010, and I used to be a client of this agency. I am a fan and I'm a believer of an organization I am a believer of a social service. And Catholic Social Services basically empowered me to understand the settlement part of my journey in Canada.
A lot of the jobs temporary foreign workers do are very important in terms of sustaining our economy. So I'll take the case example of living caregivers. It's very hard to get a person for childcare. I know personally as a mother, getting a childcare provider in Canada is extremely difficult. And a lot of times people have to bring in a temporary foreign worker to be able to do that through the caregiver program. When the caregiver migrates to Canada, though, they contribute to the economy in several ways. A lot of women will not be able to work outside of the home if it wasn't for the caregiver that is actually taking care of their child.
We need to rethink how our immigration system is supposed to support the economy, how it's supposed to make us a stronger society. And that rethink needs to include how do we actually want to use migrant workers in the country? And if we do think we need those workers here, why are we not letting them stay permanently? So I think that's the big recommendation, is that if they're, it sounds like it's rhetoric, but I think there's a truism here, is that they're good enough to work in Canada, they're good enough to live here and be citizens and be a part of us on a permanent basis.